Come hang out with the Shop Talk Live crew and some of the world's finest woodworkers at Fine Woodworking Live 2018, April 20th through 22nd in Southbridge, Massachusetts. Head over to finewoodworkinglive.com and use the coupon code SHOPTALK to get $50 off your registration. To our podcast listeners in the Redondo Beach, Torrance, California area, Festool is bringing their roadshow to you on March 20th at Hudson and West from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. See tool demos and get your questions answered. Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host, Ben Strano, and with me this week is Tom McKenna.
Hi.
And Mike Pekovich.
Hey, I got kicked down to like number 3 now.
Yeah, no.
Sucks.
I'm number
Sorry,
2.
man.
Hey, what happened here?
I think you should say, welcome to Shop Talk Live. I'm here with Tom McKenna and Mike Pekovich. I'm Ben Strano.
Yeah.
That gets you down to kind of where you belong.
Yeah, just because the table rotated doesn't mean
all I did was just
and then there's Jeff.
flip.
Oh yeah, and don't forget about Jeff.
And Jeff's here this time
God,
after we had the void.
So we give Ben a new job, and you know we're 10 seconds in, and he already forgot his coworker Jeff.
The power has gone straight to my head.
So we have a new king of the pod.
We're the king of the pod.
Right on.
Apparently not.
The pod king. No, not to be confused with Tide Pods.
Don't eat them.
Don't eat Shop
Don't
Talk.
eat the Pod King either.
What was at the end of Where the Wild Things Are, the movie, and the kid like takes off and sails away, and the monsters say, "Wow, that's really good. We usually end up eating our kings." So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It was kind of a weird movie. I love the books, but the movie kind of freaked me out.
It's a great kids film.
Wasn't James Gandolfini in that?
My reign is off to a great start. That's all I'm going to say.
Control your guests. Rule number 1.
Well,
It's starting to be like a Fine Woodworking Live meeting.
yeah. Yeah, those go off the rails pretty quickly. And speaking of Fine Woodworking Live meetings,
Hi.
what's going on with Fine Woodworking Live?
Everything.
No.
No, well, as we've been talking about, April 20th through the 22nd, Southbridge, Mass. One of the things that I'm really enjoying, and Mike and I actually yesterday met with Anissa Capsalis, who is handling the student exhibit, which is new this year. We're actually going to have some fantastic furniture, it turns out.
And a lot of it.
Yeah, Mike and I looked at it, and we're probably going to have around 18 pieces from students.
Yeah,
and it's
really cool stuff.
Some really nice work, and very varied.
That's a lot more than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be like...
It's a few more than I was expecting, but what's really nifty is you can really see kind of the core tenets of each of the schools, you know, the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship and the North Bennett Street School, and kind of get a little bit of a insight into their ideology, if that's the right word for it, you know. But that's going to be great. We've, we're setting up, finalizing the schedule, the rooms, and all that fun stuff, and we're getting down to the little nitty-bitty, itty-gritty details.
I'm excited about the woodworking podcast Tug of War.
Really?
Yeah.
We're doing that? Is that a thing?
No.
We
should.
Hey, I think we should.
Because
I don't think Matt Cremona has anything on you.
But Shannon Rogers is like
That's true.
6 foot.
That's
12.
true. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
We can use the cords.
It's all about leverage, though.
it's all
But
about
we
the
have
anchor.
technically we have 5, 6.
We have a very low center of gravity on our podcast.
That's true. I think my head weighs like 50 pounds, so that's a good weight.
But I have heard that all of Wood Talk will be there, and they're going to be probably potting at some point.
Yeah, I don't know when or where they'll be doing it, but we'll be potting as well.
And Diami from Modern Woodworking Association is going to be there.
Who's that?
Diami Blackie.
Diami? Who?
He's helping us out. I'm excited. He's
No,
going to be
I'm
helping
kidding.
us out again this year.
That's good. As long as he doesn't get a little rowdy during the welcoming ceremony as he was last year. He was a little out of control.
Well, he was getting himself amped up for the Hardwood Derby,
Oh, that's right.
which he won, as
That's
did
right. Yeah. Well, he
our own Mike Pekovich.
he backed up all of his talk on Instagram.
He did.
So, but you kind of let him cheat. So I'm still saying he cheated.
It was resin infused.
Mm-hmm.
It was something you would find in a woodworking magazine. I consider it legit. I mean, he didn't Matt Kenny
It's fine. That's fine.
with 3 pounds of brad nails stuck in the middle.
No, that was fun. Last year was great. I think this year with the woodworking trivia game that we'll be doing, we're gonna have some great prizes for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think just overall, it'll be good. I'm looking forward to just getting there because right now it's sort of stress time.
Yeah.
Making sure that we have to contact movers, and Matt's doing a lot of work in terms of making sure the presenters get what they need. We're sort of down to
Juggling workbenches.
We're getting down to the wire. We're 6 weeks out.
Yeah. So and
right.
I mean, we're filling up too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so
now we're getting-
finewoodworkinglive.com. Go and register
and use coupon code ShopTalk
yes,
to get $50 off your price of registration.
it's going to be a blast.
Yep.
Right on.
Hopefully, once I get there, it'll be a blast for everyone but me. No, that's not
like
true.
Friday afternoon, it'll get fun for us. But
No,
hopefully it gets fun for everyone.
once I'm there, like last year, my big fear was that there would be some sort of a hiccup in the logistics of getting, presenter materials, or the mover's truck would break down or something like that. But it was so smooth last year. I'm really not that concerned about all that, And once I'm there, it's just sort of, hanging out with woodworking people. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
Right on. All right. Well, let's hit the questions. And I was listening to Fine Home Buildings podcast, and one thing that I noticed is that Justin gives the email address all the time, and I think that we need to be doing that. So we're going to answer some questions. If you want your question answered, send it into shoptalk@taunton.com. So,
how do you spell that? I'm kidding.
I have no idea. All right. So our first question comes from Corey. I have an old Stanley No. 3 that I've been using as a smoothing plane. Over the weekend, I was smoothing the inside of a bunch of box parts, and I noticed that as I use the plane, the shavings are continually getting thicker and thicker. I'm guessing that this is an adjustment issue, but I wasn't sure what to change.
Could it be that the blade is advancing?
Well,
Not tightened down?
I would assume that the bed is not retracting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, one of two things. If you're starting with really uneven boards and you're taking passes and you're hitting just the high spots, it'll be like tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
Sort of like it'll feel like you're taking thin shavings. And then as you get closer to flat, you're taking a complete shaving. It will seem as if you're taking a heavier shaving. This doesn't quite sound like that. And I have experienced this where you just got to sock down your little lever cap screw more. The blade is just...
It's shifting a little bit,
Yeah.
right? That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's just sort of, like you said, it's just slowly advancing as you go along.
I mean, wouldn't it only laterally change if the lever cap was loose? It would advance on one side but retract on the other, maybe.
There's probably some play in there.
It just does.
I was wondering if it's a backlash issue with the adjustment knob, where if he's working his way down to a thin shaving and never advancing the knob, then
you'd end up taking lighter and lighter cuts until it stops cutting, because that's actually when the blade would retract to take up the slop and the backlash.
okay. So, but I mean, you do always want to deepen the cut when adjusting.
Always back off and always move into the cut.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like a table saw is the same thing. You want to...
Everything. Joiner,
If
planer,
you come down with it, you want to come
back.
back up just a little bit to take out that.
tuning up your guitar.
And it doesn't take much to get that heavier shaving or lighter shaving, at least on the planes that I use. One slight turn can make for a big change in the thickness. So
yeah, it is. I mean, I've often wondered. Well, I guess the pitch of the threads is pretty. It's a pretty fine screw as it is. The adjustment mechanism.
Yes.
Do you have a Stanley 3?
Yeah.
You do.
It's a plane. Mike has it.
And a 603
What's a 603?
Bedrock.
So what's the difference between Bedrock and like a regular Sweetheart?
Primarily the way the frog adjusts, where you can loosen the frog and adjust the frog with screws from the back while the blade is still in place.
Yeah.
So non-Bedrocks, you have to actually take the blade off.
Yep.
Adjust
Loosen
it.
screws, adjust it, take a good gas, put it back in, check
And
it
is
out.
it a non-Bedrock? Is it just the two screws, or is there an actual adjustment?
There's a 2 screws inside plus an adjustment screw on the back, sort of connected to a little yoke back there.
Yeah.
The other thing is the bearing surface between the frog and the body. There's much more continuous metal-to-metal contact in a Bedrock than there is in a Stanley.
Okay.
Bailey style plane.
So, like a Lee Nielsen is based off of a Bedrock?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Well, that answers that.
And the sides of the plane are flat at the top instead of rounded,
Okay.
and that just looks cool.
That really does.
Looks like a hot rod.
Matt Wada has like the whole collection.
Yeah, I hate that.
All of his planes match. They're all the same model. They must be 603s, but all right. So moving on to the next question, and this question and question number 3 are kind of related, so they might flow into one another. But
We like flow.
yeah. So this one comes from Dean, and Dean Hedstrom, who's our buddy. I hope we'll see him at Live. He was at Live last year, I think, with his father, who was awesome.
No, it's I believe Marsh is his cousin.
Okay. Marsh?
Marsh, yeah. They're both great guys.
Yeah, he was a riot. Marsh was. All right. So, is it wrong to use pocket screws in fine woodworking? I am building a cabinet inspired by Gregory Paolini's Arts and Crafts sideboard in the May-June 2015 issue. Mine is shorter, narrower, shallower, and without drawers. The Paolini piece has a frame and panel case bottom with mortise and tenon construction. I certainly could join the stiles and rails with mortise and tenon or dowels, but I do not need the strength of either. Would it be sacrilege to use pocket screws? I've used this method liberally while constructing prototypes and full-size mock-ups, but never in a final piece. No one, save me, my cousin,
Marsh.
or some conservator who ends up appraising the piece on Antiques Roadshow 2060 will ever know my transgression.
Are we done? No, that was a long question.
You
good.
were a little more liberal with the editing than I am, so
Yeah, well,
it was a good question though. So.
That's a good question because
It is.
that doesn't apply only to pocket screws. It applies to a lot of things.
Gappy joinery.
biscuits even.
Not even
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
like
it's more like where where you need strength. It's kind of a whole physiology of furniture making in a way. But I think I'm not sure what in terms of when he's talking about rails. I'm assuming he's talking about the bottom assembly, but I'm not sure if he's talking about anything else outside of the construction.
No, I think he's just talking about this one frame and panel piece, which
That's fine.
in this piece just makes up the floor of the interior, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I like he said, he doesn't need the strength. And we ran an article. And we actually did a book with Mark Edmondson on pocket hole joinery. And Mark Edmondson is a pro furniture maker who uses pocket screws for non-structural applications, and he uses them for face frames. He uses them for toe kicks, and he uses them in some of his case construction as well. So I personally, I've never used pocket holes.
Really?
No, never have. Not once.
Whoa.
So, I've seen them used in tabletops, attaching tabletops, but I've
to an
never
apron?
used it. I've just never done it.
I was like the pocket hole king for a while.
Yeah. I like doing cabinetry, built-ins and stuff. I typically do all of my face frames with pocket screws. Sometimes like an upper rail or something like that, pocket screw if it has to go in after the fact. Furniture, and I kind of know what Dean is talking about, where, yeah, it'll work, but is it something that's like consistent with everything else? And I think it's up to the maker. Like if it's the right joint for the job and that it's going to do what you want it to do structurally, as Tom was saying, and then you want it to look on the show face the way it looks, and in this case it's concealed, okay, that's pretty good. I have a feeling if you flip the whole thing upside down, you might see the pocket holes. I don't know. That would...
A commission piece, you don't want to be able to flip it upside down and see the pocket holes.
I would say that's true. Like, for instance, like when I've made like a chest of drawers in the past, I would use 1/2-inch Baltic birch as the back, which is really smart because it's really stable. It keeps everything really square from racking.
Strong.
But somehow it's just not traditional, and I end up going with rabbeted shiplap backboards, solid wood for the most part now, just because I didn't want a sheet of plywood on the back of a.
I have that same
solid with chest of
aversion,
drawers.
but I use biscuits, probably, more likely where a pocket hole might be appropriate. I've done, non-structural frames with it. I even assembled my the cabinet on stand I built. I used biscuits for the case, a lot of them.
But is there? But that's
but
totally invisible.
It's invisible.
You would never
right?
know.
It's invisible. But I also like the idea of the glue, that glue joint, whereas a pocket hole joint, we did a joint strength test and the pocket hole didn't do well. So I certainly wouldn't use it for my own view. I wouldn't use it for a structural application.
But this is totally non-structural.
Yeah, exactly.
And to me, it's if you want to spend your time in the shop doing something other than mortise and tensioning a non-structural blade bottom for a case piece, go right ahead. Use your shop time however you want to.
The truth is, he could also, if he's worried about when the thing is done, and he doesn't like even any kind of visibility of the holes inside the case, you can always plug them. You can. But it doesn't look great either way.
No,
it's gonna look
I don't
weird,
think I've ever seen. Unless it's a painted piece.
Here's a solution.
I've never seen a plug that didn't, I'd almost rather just see the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, chop out the little pocket by hand,
Yeah.
and then you're good.
That's true. We do this rough cut
So
TV
it's sort
show.
of like a triangular bottom
Yeah.
with sort of, little sloping triangular little walls down to it.
Just tune.
So anything but a pocket hole jig. Do a pocket hole, but don't use a jig.
Yeah, you don't need a jig. Their pocket holes are really, really easy to do without it. Bob Van Dyke has written a couple articles on.
There's no way
using
I'm
it.
ever going to chop out a pocket hole.
Well, no, watch.
Because I've got a K4, a Craig K4 right there, and it's great.
Tom McLaughlin, host of a Rough Cut with Fine Woodworking show, made a shaker hall table, and he did just what Mike described. He made his own pocket holes, but he did a nice little triangular shaped hole for it, and it's pretty to look at, even if you look underneath, where it's not that long kind of dredged out
Trilled thing. Yeah.
looks like
Is
half
it only
a pipe.
prettier to us? Because we're woodworkers.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. That's all who would care about what's under the table.
Yeah,
I don't know
and-
anyone who's looking underneath except woodworkers.
There's a connotation of, well, that counts as traditional joinery,
Because you work.
chopping it yourself.
You had to use something.
I would use the Craig jig or whatever, and then I would chop it out
Chop
square.
it out. Just take the walls
Yeah.
of the...
Do something.
Yeah.
Chamfer the edge.
Yeah.
Go in there with a Sloyd knife afterwards.
little
And
hand forged,
handwork.
square head,
Yeah.
screws going up through there or something like that.
The bottom line, I don't think there's any, it's sort of an aesthetic choice, whether you can stomach it, live with it. It's unseen.
I kind of want to come back to your disdain for plywood backboards.
It's not a disdain, it's ambivalence.
Okay.
Although what I have done, and I have no problem with whatsoever, is for a larger piece, especially when you open the doors and you see the back, that's really important. I'll do sort of a faux frame and panel. I'll do a frame and panel sort of with stub tenons, but I'll have a solid, veneer plywood panel, like cherry plywood panel with a little frame sort of stub tenon around it. So in essence, it's a plywood panel. It has the structure and rigidity of it, but it looks like a frame and panel, solid wood frame and panel.
So glued in all the way around.
Glued in all the way around. Yeah.
It's funny.
Then screwed in from the back or even glued in from the back.
It's funny when I, getting back, talking about plywood backs again, I used to, I would make a bookcase or any kind of a case piece with shelves, I used to just put a, fairly nice piece of plywood on the back and then not worry about it. But now I'm so fussy about my woodworking that when I made the cabinet on stand, I still used a 1/4 inch thick piece of plywood for the back. but I trimmed it out, on the back. And I'm like, as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, what is wrong with me? This is crazy. But, I wanted the piece, because you can still see the back when you walk past it. And I didn't want it to just see any kind of gappage around it.
I get that, because you knew where it was going. You knew it would be somewhat visible.
But it was, it was another opportunity to kind of just add a nice little touch to the piece and make it really, just what I wanted.
But, I mean, technically, wouldn't a plywood back be structurally more sound than shiplap back boards?
Yeah, but then so would building the entire thing out of plywood with no wood movement.
All right, well played.
So
well played. All right. Well, moving on to another pocket hole question. This one comes from Michael. I am making a counter height table for someone for their kitchen. They want to be able to store their cookbooks underneath the table, so I thought of building a box which would be pocket screwed to the underside of the top to function as a small book cubby. My question is how to go about attaching the cubby to the underside of the top, considering I'll get wood movement across the top. So pocket holes from a jig are a little bit tighter of a hole. It's only going to make enough room for that screw.
Are we envisioning like a whole box or sort of a U-shaped thing?
And that's
what I don't.
For me, the answer is just go with a whole box
and just screw it.
And then just screw it, and you can use wider holes.
Yeah.
That'll give you room for wood movement.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but if you're doing a U thing and he wants to pocket hole it in, I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't know if a pocket hole would be my choice, just because I'd worry about the weight pulling out the screws a little bit. I'm not sure what that. I'm not sure when we tested the joints, we were testing for racking, and this is a different kind of a force. So I don't know if it's wood holes.
I just always feel like it's hard to tighten up. Like, you can never confidently tighten a screw in a pocket hole as tight as you can a normal screw, just because you're worried about blowing out that end grain,
Right.
Splitting the one piece.
Yeah.
So I say make it a box, a 4-sided box.
Yeah. Screw up through the top.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Slot one of the screws, one of the holes.
Yeah.
And let it rip.
Right on. Okay. There you go, Michael. All right, so let's move on to our all-time favorite tool of all time for this week. Mike Bekovich, you surprised me with this one.
I surprised myself. It's
a Craig K4 jig.
Almost. It's a specific type of router bit that I actually have, prior to this, a fairly high disdain for, because geometrically I think it's sort of a counterproductive geometry. It's a V-groove bit, so it's a little pointy top bit. The reason why it's my favorite tool of all time of the week is because I've been doing some things with mitered liner boxes, dovetail boxes or cases with mitered liners that fit in. Normally, I cut those miters at the table saw with the blade tilted 45 degrees, and I have a little jig, kind of like a crosscut sled, with stop blocks that I can cut my miters on. And I kind of have been going away from that just because it's really easy to get a little bit of a feathered edge at the top of that miter at the table saw, even with a really sharp blade. I don't know what it has to do with. Maybe it's like because I'm using a really thin stock and there's a little vibration. It's never 100% clean.
Like any run out and the arbor is going to...
Something.
Yeah.
Or yes.
Well, the table saw's a violent tool. That's just the nature of it.
Also, I've been moving, and what I've done is I've always had stop blocks. So I'll miter one in, flip it around, put that against the stop, make a cut, do some tests to get my stop blocks lined up exactly right. So I'm mitering and cutting to length all at once on the table saw.
Okay.
Which, it works. You can do that. I've done it for a really long time. Matt Kenny has always taken a different approach where he will cut the parts exactly to length with the end square. And then I think either at the router table or even just with a hand plane, he'll miter the ends just right up until you're not actually removing material, but you have a miter all the way across. I've kind of started moving toward that. And the little router bit, the V bit, so I'll go to square ends exactly to length, and I'll set up my router table with a V bit buried into the fence, and I'll run my miter, and I'll leave just a hair of a flat at the top.
Now, you're actually, in this picture, you're using a chamfer bit.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. So the chamfer bit, meaning it's like a V-groove bit with a bearing at the top. Yes. Yeah. And then when I'm doing dividers midway through the liners, this is where I used to use this works really well, a finger joint blade. So it's a wider flat top blade at the table saw tilted at 45 degrees to make these cuts. The problem with this is if I'm recommending this or writing an article on this, that's kind of a high bar. That's kind of a big stumbling block for a lot of people. It's like, what? Now I have to get like this $120 finger joint blade for my table saw and tilt it, and then I need another blade to cut the miter. So I thought, well, I'll just go with the V-groove bit. And the reason I don't like them is that in the very, very center of the bit, it's like not spinning. It's like it's not cutting per se. Oh. So it's sort of like, well, how does this thing even work? And it does kind of work.
Does it leave a round at the point?
It leaves a tiny round. Yeah, I think that might be depending on the bit. Mine might be a little bit beat. Okay. But it's one of those things where it's like, I hate this because it shouldn't work. But then it's like, it works well enough. Yeah. And I think it's a really good solution. And so now instead of getting that chamfer bit for the miters, you can just get a V-groove bit, use the sides to cut the miters on the ends, and then also use it to cut the little V-grooves in the thing. So it's sort of this all-in-one bit. I think it's a really good solution, and I was able to get really good results from it. So
cool. I've used my chamfer bit for miters. Works pretty well.
Yeah.
I've actually thought of having this V-groove bit as an all-time favorite tool before, because we got one in the shop because you did that video where we used it to cut through box sides and then fold them over.
Oh, yeah.
And just make little trays, if you will,
little fold-up trays.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm still using mine.
You know, I am too. And the one that I screwed up testing it.
It shows up in my photos sometimes.
Nice.
Anyway.
But so we have one there, and it's never a bit that I would go out to buy unless we needed it for this video. Right. But I find I use it for making V-blocks all the time. I've done it like 2 or 3 times where you need to cut a dowel or something like that. And in our shop, any piece of wood that does not have keep written on it gets thrown away or chopped up and used for something else within weeks. Right. You know? So it's just so quick to make a V-block now that we have this bit there. And a V-block is one of those things that, like, if you don't have one around, you might not, you might try and make a cut without it.
Yes,
when you
definitely.
really should be using a V-block.
Yes.
You know? So I think it was worth maybe the $20 or $30 that we paid for it, or that somebody else paid for it.
I don't. That's one router bit I don't have is a V bit, and I remember when Matt did an article. I don't know if it was focused on that joint, but it was one of his projects, and I really like that bird's mouth kind of detail on a small box or frame. It's really kind of a pretty touch.
Yeah, especially a nice bird's eye maple like you have.
Was that for your tee box?
That was
frame?
Yeah. So it's a tee box that I've made in the past, and it ended up being made on an episode of the new Rough Cut show
with Fine Woodworking.
Right. It's funny. I just got the edit.
Oh God, I did too. Tom McLaughlin
they sent it to you.
Said, Mike, here's a rough cut of the episode. Take a look. I was mortified. You know how they say the camera adds 10 pounds? It also adds like 10 years and a million wrinkles.
Well, you're looking at you're seeing we are told not to pay attention to like focus or anything like that. Just we're paying attention to the content.
To
Because
rough
it hasn't been corrected and fixed up and polished. So
There's no finish applied, no shellac wash coat. They haven't even gone over it with a number 4.
Man,
but it's funny. I was going to ask if you wanted to take a look at it.
I did, unfortunately. And I watched it like in bed, like right before I was going to bed. I was checking my mail on my iPad. Oh, check it out. It's like, I'm not going to watch this tonight. Fine, I'm going to watch it.
I haven't seen it. I only saw the intro when you first show up on camera. Looks
Anyway.
good to me.
Anyway, so
yeah.
we made the tee box, and then because of that, I'm currently laying out an article on making the tee box as well, sort of as a companion piece.
Cool.
So
Yeah, it's awesome.
So both those things sort of prompted me to sort of rethink my methods a little bit. And I think it improved. It's definitely a more doable thing for more people.
Do you find when you write an article, you really, and I'm sure for you it's multi-level because you write an article and a lot of times you teach on the project
Yeah.
as well. Do you find that like you really hone your processes
Oh, yeah.
through doing that?
You know, my favorite thing to do is now, and it is to make something, teach it as a class, and then write an article on it. Because it's one thing, how would I do this? It's another thing, how do I get 15 people to do this, with success?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's really going to inform how I would recommend doing something in an article.
Yeah.
So I think it's really valuable. And it's not just, just think of a way that someone else can do it other than you. It's like, no, this forces me to really think my way through it so that after the fact, no, this is how I do it because I actually stopped to think
Yeah.
about the best way to do it. So, it's definitely, hopefully it's making me a better teacher and a better author. It's most definitely making me a better woodworker.
And that's one thing that we get a lot where a lot of people, accomplished woodworkers, want to do an article on a project that they've never done before. And we go, no, you kind of got to do it first.
Yeah.
Twice.
Because we're not going to
Because we're going to make you build it 2 more times.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's for the greater good. All right. So, Tom, you want to go?
Hi.
Or do you want me to go?
I'll
'Cause
go.
mine's lame.
Yours is lame.
Kind of.
Well, mine is not that lame. Yeah, sure. Mine isn't exactly one tool. It's sort of my collection of sharpening gear and sort of how I've evolved, to come to this place. But basically, my sharpening kit has a granite plate, sandpaper, some mortar stones. I use a Veritas Mark II honing jig that I bought with the chisel clamp head that I've just really started to use a lot. Some jojoba oil, spray adhesive mineral spirits. The mineral spirits are just to take off the goo from the sandpaper on the granite, and lots of rags, lots of paper towels.
Now, I saw this picture, and are you using the jojoba oil to lubricate your sandpaper sharpening like Raleigh does? With camellia oil?
Yeah, I've been doing
Okay.
that. It's because otherwise it's really it sounds bad and feels bad as you're rubbing your expensive tools on it, but it certainly does help build up a slurry and makes it a lot easier when I'm flattening. But I use the granite and sandpaper to flatten, and I use it to grind the primary bevel.
Right on.
And I used to use a grinder, and I never went out and bought like a really nice rest for it.
Yeah.
I think maybe if I did, I wouldn't be here, but I really like the control of this. And what I like about the jig, I hadn't been really using the chisel head very often, and I am just going through getting ready to start a next project, so I'm sharpening a bunch of stuff, and I've been cranking on chisels. And what I really love about this head is I was able to take my 1/8" chisel, and usually I just freehand that because I can't fit it into an eclipse type
Those guys are tough.
thing.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of wing it. But this guy holds it securely, and I've never gotten such a great polish on my secondary bevel as I am now. So So it's taken years to sort of get to this really comfortable zone for sharpening, you know, and it's really simple. And I know some people like to freehand hone, but I just like the quickness of setup when it comes to sharpening. I enjoy sharpening, but I don't want to sit there and try to fuss a lot with stuff. And I used to use an Eclipse jig, and I had a little setup that I learned about from Dana Polkowski. We did an article on, you know, that little sharpening setup where you used blocks. But even that was just sort of imprecise for me. So this is just quick and dirty, and I'm cranking.
We had talked about this on Monday, I think, but when I first got here, you had taken me through like a nice private sharpening class, if you will, and I over the next week or so, I sharpened everything in the shop. And when I got to the 1/8" chisel, I go to take it to the grinder. It was like
you touch it, yeah. It's like a firecracker fuse.
That's the thing. And I've worked my way down to it, but I mean that 1/8" chisel burned and lost its temper so fast.
There's just not enough heat there, not enough mass to dissipate the heat from that edge. Yeah.
So, probably the granite plate with sandpaper is the way to go with that. I think in the end, I was just, I ground it flat again and just sit there and like,
The funny thing about the granite plate is I bought that thing a few years ago, and it was in the box. It was on sale at Woodcraft, and I had a gift card, and I was like, well, I could use a granite plate for flattening, and I bought it, and I never used it, and I'm trying to. I think I was using my Waterstones for flattening, and then I was, and that takes a really long time with 220 grit to start off to try to flatten something that's really not flat. So I, just by chance, I realized, oh wait, I have that granite plate somewhere, and I found it, busted out, whacked some sandpaper down on it, and I learned this. I did this after I went to see Chris Gochner. Do an article on, and part of it was sharpening, and his routine is using the sandpaper method. And I had an out of whack. I think it was maybe a plain. It was probably a plain blade. And I went to flatten it, and using a really coarse grit sandpaper, and I was done like pretty quickly. And I was like, why did I wait so long to go this route? I think I was always precious about the tooling and. Not remembering that steel is meant to be worked and shaped, and so.
That's a good thing to keep in mind.
Cool.
They design it to do this stuff. My all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is these little Mitre spring clamps.
I'm sorry. No.
I've only ever seen them used in like trim carpentry videos, on fine home building and stuff like that, and people use them for door casing a lot, but I was in the Habitat store, and it was one of those glorious days in the Habitat store where they had like 3-foot bar clamps for $10 a piece, like the nice made in American beefy aluminum ones, So I cleaned them out. I think I got 4 or 5 of those. And then they had this Mitre spring clamp set for $15. And it was like, how do I not buy this?
Yeah.
And recently, well, not that recently, I had to do some picture frames for a video prop a while ago, and I had just done up extra stock. I was going to make 2 frames and wound up only doing 1. And I used a band clamp on the first set, and those are always kind of a pain in the butt. Yeah. And there's just I've never really found a great way of clamping picture frames. And so I was like, you know what? It's a picture frame. I don't really care if it has the little holes from because these spring clamps, they do leave a little divot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really care right now. Yesterday, I just need to make a picture frame, get it up, put this picture up on the wall that I've been holding onto for over a year, probably. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to spline these anyways. So if I use these clamps, which for holding miters together, they work better than anything I've ever messed with. because that's their sole purpose. They just clamp it down. They're easy. They're quick. You can still futz with them a little bit. You can they still give you enough wiggle room to line things up a little bit.
I used it. I used that contraption back in the 80s when I was doing more carpentry in the summers. And I remember my boss, we were trimming out a room and I was in charge of doing the mitering, and I'm like, okay. But he gave me that, and I didn't even know how to, the thing with the wrench, you basically take the spring and squeeze it open so that when you put it on the wood, it clamps it together. But that thing worked like a dream on door carpet, on door trim, getting those miters tight, and then you just pop in the nails. It really worked well for that.
And that's where you see them used all the time. But if you're going to spline
you fill
them,
in paint. That's what we were doing.
If you're going to spline them, just be careful with the placement of them. The divots that you leave behind will get excavated with the spline. So I don't know. It worked really well. The only problem that I had on this particular picture frame, I did my splines with the biscuit joiner at the shop, and it did not go deep enough to
get them.
And since it's not my biscuit joiner, I didn't want to disassemble the depth stop on it.
Right.
And then have it screw up somebody else's work. So I'm
I've never
just
cut spline slots with a biscuit joiner.
It works great.
Can you make like a little V something?
I actually just so there's the biscuit joiner at the shop is a DeWalt that's permanently screwed to a table.
Right. That's a Michael Fortune trick, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, and if I had not given away my biscuit joiner when I moved, I would be doing that right now.
I have a biscuit joiner. Do you want one?
If you're gonna give it to me,
give it.
We'll talk later.
We'll talk off camera.
But
that's a cool idea.
I wound up just drawing two 45-degree lines on the table.
Okay.
And the biscuit joiner has that little center cutout, that little notch. So you just stick the corner of the frame right in there, line it up to your 45-degree line, and
that's a bold move.
It works great.
I'm sure it does. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I just wish it went about a quarter of an inch deeper now.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, the marks on the frame, if you make your frame a hair thicker or wider, you can plane those marks off
I was thinking, because I haven't planed the outside, obviously. I just splined them this morning, so I'll cut the splines and plane it. And I was thinking I can probably take a lot of that off with a hand plane. We'll see.
Yeah,
and I can probably fill it with a little bit of putty too. So
I mean, Craig Thibodeau, I traveled out to see him, and he did an article on cutting miters at the table. So at the back end, we gave some tips on clamping, and he uses glue blocks, that are cut at a 45, and he glues those on, and when the assembly's dry, he just cuts them off. But there are all sorts of ways.
His glue blocks were intricate too, because he was doing codes.
Craig is an intricate guy. With the stuff that he builds is pretty outrageous. But he's so mechanically minded, that it doesn't take him very long to come up with clever solutions to mechanical problems.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question, which is about bandsaw blades. It's from Matt. How do you tell when a bandsaw blade is too dull to use? What are the signs? Also, can bandsaw blades be sharpened, or is it better to replace them when they get dull?
Replace.
Good question about the sharpening.
I've seen people on YouTube do it.
Yeah.
I've never done it.
I think Michael Fortune has his resharpened. I'm not sure.
I don't know. He uses
if you went through as many bandsaw blades as Michael Fortune probably
he uses
does.
those $10
Starrett
blades. I can't remember the name of the company.
He's got a company, and Jeff's got it on video somewhere.
Yeah, he's got a guy.
Yeah, like he goes to the company and goes, I don't want Joe to weld the joint. I want Don to weld the joint. And if Don's not in today, I'll wait.
Why is Joe still working there?
Well, I don't know.
But I think the only blade I might consider getting resharpened is my expensive resaw blade. But I don't know if you can resharpen.
That's carbide, right?
Carbide, right?
Yeah.
You can't really restore that.
No, carbide you can, yeah. Absolutely.
But
that much, I mean, I'm not sure if there's enough on a bandsaw blade, like a table saw blade, you get a good amount.
I think people get them sharpened all the
Do you?
time.
I don't know. I've never done it, so I haven't worn out my blade yet, so I'm not sure. But I think
That's the idea of carbide.
But they also charge by the tooth
oh
to sharpen. So
Yeah.
well, but I mean the carbide blades are like 120, 110, 120 bucks.
But so for reference, he's using like a 1/2-inch Timberwolf. So we're looking at probably a $30 blade.
yeah, so
Yeah.
average, so standard blade, nice, good quality blade.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes it's just quicker to. I mean, I buy blades 2 at a time. When one gets worn out, there's no. That's why I don't have to sit and wait to get one sharpened or get a new one. I shouldn't say I buy them 2 at a time. I have 2.
You keep 2.
Yeah,
You keep one
yeah,
on hand.
yeah.
I have a
So-
Grizzly 17-inch saw, and the blade size is really wacky, so I would always order 3 blades at a time. And
Is it wacky? I thought it was a standard length. Is it like?
I think it's like 131.5 inches or something. I mean, it's not a standard size. If you don't buy it directly from Grizzly, you have to get them
Right.
custom made.
Okay.
In terms of whether you're sharp or not, it sort of comes down to how well can you track a line.
Yeah.
So if you're cutting a board, curves along the surface, is it really staying with your pencil line? Or if you're trying to just saw to a straight line, is it wandering left or right?
Yeah.
If it is, that's a sign you're probably not sharp. And especially if you're resawing, the blade will really want to wander.
Yeah.
And you can waste some good lumber trying
Yeah.
to resaw with a...
Yeah,
Which is
you'll-
probably more expensive than the bandsaw.
Yeah.
blade.
you'll
exactly.
bow out the inside. I think the other telltale sign from my experience is just resistance to the cut. Like you get it with any saw or any tool that's getting dull. It takes longer to make the cuts that you're used to making. And sometimes it's hard to, because if you're using the bandsaw daily, sometimes it's hard to tell. Because it happens so subtly and so long over time. It's like I never know when my car brakes are going until I take it in. It's like, I need brakes. I didn't.
Or it starts
I was
squealing.
still stopping.
I made the mistake of changing out bandsaw blades just before I was cutting a lot of MDF parts for like a stack laminated bending forms. And once I got done cutting all that, it was just beat.
I did it. I had changed bandsaw blades, and then we put a new railing on our deck in Nashville. And I wanted to do it like nice chamfer. I really went to town with it, and I cut a lot of pressure treated 4x4s, and there was just no coming back from
Yeah, no, it's a consumable. So.
Yeah. With bandsaw blades, I almost feel about them the same way I do with sandpaper, where it's like the moment you have the thought when you're sanding something, I wonder if this sanding pad is done, this disc.
It's usually
yeah.
dead.
That's your sign.
Yeah.
And the moment that I started switching, the moment I had that thought,
Yes.
sanding was so much easier and so
Yes.
much nicer.
Yeah.
Just don't sit there and think about the money or the cost of the consumable. Just change it out because you're wasting your time otherwise.
Yeah, I usually advise if you pull a disc off your sander, don't put it back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of
it's
people
toast.
are, what? I did, what? It's like, okay, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by like the 20 packs.
Yeah.
Because if you've
Yeah.
got a stack of them sitting there, it's a lot easier to just swap
Yeah.
them out.
If I'm to the point where I'm breaking out a random orbit sander, I'm going to want to get through that as fast as I can.
That's right. Yeah, when I used my random orbit on the end grain trivet that I made, I was just like that. As soon as it got any sign of just stopping, I was like, new
Next.
one gone.
Yeah.
And it's so nice. I mean, that's the whole point of using that tool is fast.
But I mean that goes back to the point that you had of keep an extra bandsaw blade. So the second you use that, you open up a bandsaw blade, order another one.
Right.
Which we recently ordered. Maybe 6 months ago, I ordered 2 blades for the big bandsaw at work, and then we cleaned out a closet and found like 3 more.
Oh, that's
it's
good.
like-
That's a bonus. It's like I try to have that same rule when I replace a headlamp or a tail lamp in my
Do that,
car.
yeah.
Of course, I don't do it, and then I get pulled over and reminded by the policeman that I've got a light out.
Yeah, but replace the other side. That's what my father. Well, the
Yeah.
other side's not far behind then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hit this last question. Let's see here. This one comes from Steven. I'm an amateur woodworker, and I've recently started selling some tables that I have been making. I would like to start joining my own lumber, but I cannot decide between a 6-inch and an 8-inch joiner. The price difference between the two is almost double. Is the extra 2 inches worth it in the long run?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those last 4 words, in the long run.
Yeah, I think I would even. I meant to go and look at compare prices from an 8-inch joiner and see what the next level might cost, because I would consider, if you're thinking of going pro, I think you'd probably even outgrow that 8-inch joiner at some point. But I would certainly make that jump from 6 to 8. That's well worth it.
That's an expensive leap from 8 to...
It would be an expensive
8 to 12.
8 to 12,
8 to 12 is huge.
yeah.
Then you're talking about a lot of floor space.
I
know a guy who might have a 12-inch joiner for sale soon. But
I think also if you can go there, get yourself an 8-inch joiner with a segmented cutter head.
Yes. Yeah, they're not that. You buy a Grizzly model, you can get a pretty nice package with a segmented head.
now, so he's making tables. You can't efficiently make tables out of 5-inch boards. That's a lot more glue ups in the long run. If he's able to use 7-inch boards, 7.5-inch boards coming off an 8-inch joiner, he's going to be saving time and money. So if this is something that he sees himself doing for a long time, I think an 8-inch joiner is a no-brainer. I don't have an 8-inch joiner. I can't afford an 8-inch joiner. I have access to a 16-inch joiner. That helps. But if you just straight up can't afford it, I think I'd get a used 6-inch and keep saving.
Yeah, the problem is
You can't get rid of a used 6-inch.
Well, you just sell it to me, so yeah, okay. I need buried. I need one soon.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to go from no joiner to an 8-inch joiner than it is to go from a 6-inch joiner to an 8-inch joiner. Because it's like, now you got it. Now you're using it. I can kind of get by. Do I really want to try to sell this? Do I really want to buy something else? And you're going to be kind of hating life for a really long time as long as you have a 6-inch joiner.
It's funny. I'm not hating my life, but I have a 6-inch joiner, and it is limiting. And I upgraded from an old Delta to a fairly new Grizzly, and it's a nice tool, but it's only 6 inches wide, So I do a lot of edge jointing, but I've resorted frequently lately to flattening boards using my planer and a sled and some wedges, and I've been having good success. If I don't actually do it at our shop where we have a 16-inch joiner.
But in the whole time is money realm, that's a no-brainer to me. But at home, my 6-inch is going to be fine because I'm planning on just doing chairs at home. If I was, into casework, and I think I would, and I'll be honest with you, back in the day, I used to listen to this podcast, and this question would come up, and the answer was always, get an 8-inch joiner, it's a no-brainer, blah, blah. I'd be like, you guys don't understand what it's like down here, but it's true. If you can just wait, I would rather have to wait longer and get by with just a planer and a sled, or I do think I would buy like a $200 6-inch joiner for edge joining.
That's
and things
not
like
yes,
that.
The used 6. Get in as cheap as you can with a 6-inch.
Yeah.
With the idea that it's either temporary or I'm going to find out if I really like this craft and want to make the investment.
Yeah. Because if Steven's dream is to be a pro, then you've got to think toward, Mike does it all the time, efficiency, speed, because time is money in the end. And if you're using a 6-inch, you're probably adding a few hours to your labor costs in assembling or building a piece.
I can't imagine buying a new 6-inch joiner because the market is filled. Ever since segmented cutter heads came out, I would think that the market has just filled with 6-inch joiners that Tom McKenna is trying to sell.
No, I still have mine. Do you want to buy it? No, I mean, my machine is fine. It's just, it is very limited if you want to do a lot of diverse work.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to some listener comments. And I'm going to start pulling comments from all of the sources, from YouTube and the website and iTunes and other places. even Instagram, I think. Yeah, we had one of these come from Instagram maybe. But so Larry sent us an email and said, I was watching Shop Talk Live 158, and they were talking about lateral adjustment on a hand plane. I have started using a digital depth gauge to set the depth of the plane and to check that the cutting edge depth is the same for both sides of the plane. I don't recall ever seeing this technique used before, but it's much easier than to look at it and feel it. Mike Pekovich may want to include this in his approach to classes on hand planes.
Duly noted.
Maybe so.
That's an interesting idea, though. I mean, I've got one lying around. I might mess with the idea.
Yeah, let me know how it works.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you had a plane dedicated to shooting, like if you had one of the Lee Nielsen or the Veritas shooting planes, and you wanted to make sure that your blade was perfectly parallel to the bed, that's not a bad idea.
I don't know. It's tough.
Normally, that would be an overkill.
I think this is in the category of if it's working for you, awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then from Greg on YouTube, in reference to the warped bandsaw table from episode 158, he says, a tool and die shop with a Blanchard grinder will flatten a piece of cast iron like that top for about $100. And I think that's a pretty great solution.
What you're going to want to do there is get it on the Blanchard grinder.
Yo, Carl, get the Blanchard grinder.
You want Don to do it, not Joe.
No, not Don. Yeah, Don's definitely. I don't know what a Blanchard grinder is, but this is one of those things that when someone throws out a specific name like that, I believe them.
It's someone's last name. That's what I think.
Yeah.
The Blanchard grinder. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. All right. And then on Twitter, because it turns out we have a Twitter page.
Huh.
And all right, yeah. That's why I'm no longer in charge of social media. From I believe Tank Sade. And he tweets, listening to Fine Woodworking's podcast, Shop Talk Live, while memorizing lines and doing front squats. This is the life. And that was intriguing enough for me to go, huh?
Hold on. This I'm maybe going down the wrong path.
No,
but
it's a long path.
What
and
is
fruitful.
a front squat?
Oh, I have no idea. You are asking the wrong podcast. But hopefully Tank will tell us. But Tank, it turns out, I looked at his profile, and it turns out that Tank is an actor who was on Gilmore Girls.
Wow.
Which is a show that my sister-in-law is obsessed with. And I am supposed to reply to this with, isn't it a bit early for Finn to be awake? And there's like 3 people who just laughed.
Huh. I heard them.
That is in the Venn diagram between Shop Talk Live listeners and Gilmore Girl
Jeff had
fans.
to leave the room because he's cracking up right now. But he's got to tell us what that front squat thing is. I don't know what that's all about.
Is there a back squat?
Well, that's my follow-up question, but I wasn't sure whether it's appropriate or not. So
I think we're all familiar with the back squat.
that's what we do every day. Ben. It's the same as your initials, the old BS.
Oh, great. This is going to end well. All right. Well, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. Shop Talk Live is dependent on your questions and comments, so make sure to send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. Finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook and apparently Twitter. And look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening and have fun in the show.
And that's my life. Got to come up with your own, dude.
Wait, was that not an Ed line?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Get woodworking, y'all.